Hi everybody, you're listening to Comics and History, episode number 116, part 3, Spotlight on Green Lantern Alan Scott and the Pre-Flashpoint Era continued. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian J. Rygate, and class is back from recess as we go into our third installment of our ongoing look at Green Lantern Alan Scott in the pre-Flashpoint era. Folks, at this point, I'm thinking that it's probably going to take another 2 individual 45 sessions to get through my look at Alan Scott in the pre-Flashpoint era. Who knows if this will go into a 5th part. I was just doing some more skimming, rereading through my JSA trades as well as various other Green Lantern related trades, and there's just so much material featuring Alan Scott from the pre-Flashpoint era that one could really make their own standalone podcast in which they were talking about the Keeper of the Emerald Flame during the 1999 through 2011 period. So for those of you who are coming on board with part 3, if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, or for those of you who have listened to part 1 but may have forgotten, just a friendly reminder that this is not by any means going to be an exhaustive, definitive look at all of Alan's stories from the pre-Flashpoint era. There's a lot of stuff in the JSA trades alone which I'm skipping over here, and that's just because there are so many big moments for Alan in the pre-Flashpoint era that I just can't go issue by issue looking at all of Alan's individual appearances. But certainly, as you're listening to this monstrous-sized episode number 116, if you find yourself thinking about moments from Alan Scott's publishing history, with regards to the Flashpoint era, things that I'm not covering here on the show, but things that really stood out to you, please feel free to email me at comicsandhistory@gmail.com or leave me a line on the Comics and History Facebook page. I'd certainly be happy to include that feedback. So now with that preamble over, let's get back to our look at Alan Scott in the pre-Flashpoint era. And at the end of part 2, I stated that I would begin by talking about the story Princes of Darkness, which for a number of readers, myself included, is one of the highlights of the Goyer and Johns run on JSA. Certainly for fans of Alan Scott, this is a seminal must-read because something of major importance happened to Alan in issue number 50, something which I will be getting to talking about pretty soon. So let's begin. So on the road to the milestone 50th issue of JSA, David S. Goyer and Jeff Johns penned the story Princes of Darkness, which I want to say ran for about 6 issues. And during this time, Goyer and Johns were co-writers. I wouldn't say that either was taking the lead. It was an equal partnership in terms of coming up with concepts and crafting key character and plot developments. But this particular storyline has all of the hallmarks of a classic Jeff Johns epic, in that the story begins with the heroes being plunged into darkness, quite quickly by a formidable foe or team of foes. And through the first half to two-thirds of the story, the team goes to even darker places. They almost have to hit rock bottom before they rally back, find a way to collect themselves, recover their abilities, and then come together in the end to defeat the foe. And in the aftermath, the heroes are left feeling refreshed, revitalized, with an even stronger sense of who they are and what their purpose is. And you see those hallmarks in other Jeff Johns stories, such as Infinite Crisis, Green Lantern, Sinestro Corps War, certainly Blackest Night. So Princes of Darkness starts out with the JSA facing a trio of antagonists. The first, again, Mordru coming back. This time, he had found a way to trick Hector Hall such that Hector became lost in Dr. Fate's amulet, and Mordru was able to take on Dr. Fate's powers. Mordru was, I'd say, upping things a notch by not going out against the whole team on his own. Clearly, he learned lessons from the initial arc on JSA, and so he partnered up with Eclipso, who himself had an interesting history with the JSA and with Infinity Inc. It was Eclipso, back in the Copper Age, who had killed the Yolanda Montez Wildcat, as well as the Beth Chapel Dr. Midnight. And then Mordru had also managed to get Alan's son, Todd Rice, aka Obsidian, to join him and Eclipso as well. And so Mordru was promising Obsidian that he would have a chance to finally settle the score with his father, gain his ultimate revenge. And so early on in the storyline, these three take down the JSA's heaviest hitters. Sanderson Hawkins, aka Sand, was made to lose control over his silicon-based powers, so he ended up reverting to the giant, hulking, crazed sand creature, going back to the Bronze Age of comics. Jakeem Thunder, the current keeper of the Thunderbolt, had his vocal cords slashed so that he was not able to summon the Thunderbolt. The chair of the JSA, Mr. Terrific, was beaten into a vegetative state. And then there was Alan, of course. So Obsidian came and confronted his father, taunted him some more, and this was all to help Mordru attack Alan. Mordru actually plunged his hand right through Alan's chest and ripped out the Starheart. And when he pulled out the Starheart, it had taken on the shape of a beating human heart, albeit a green-hued beating heart. And Alan was left completely powerless. And for those who are wondering how Alan could survive with the Starheart ripped out of him, Mordru explained that Alan, in a pathetic attempt to stay alive, was mustering all of the remaining willpower he had left to keep some physical form. But in time, in shorter rather than a longer amount of time, that willpower would run out and Alan would die. And indeed, over the course of the story, Alan proceeded to age very rapidly. Till near the end, he looked like he was somewhere in his late 80s to mid 90s. And the only thing that was keeping Alan alive was the fact that his daughter Jade intervened, and she managed to set up a connection between her and her father, using her Starheart-based power. And it just spoke to how crazed Obsidian had become, that he was becoming threatening even towards his twin sister. So this story went to some very dark places, but as in a classic Jeff Johns epic, the heroes rallied. Dr. Midnight was able to use technology back at the Brownstone to project a holographic representation of Mr. Terrific's mind, and so Mr. Terrific was able to guide Dr. Midnight in performing some risky brain surgery on Jakeem Thunder that would allow him to bypass his vocal cords, summon the Thunderbolt, and then quickly heal Jakeem's wounds. Sand would be restored to normal. In issue number 51, Hector Hall would come back and he would defeat Mordru once and for all. But the real highlight for Green Lantern fans was, of course, issue number 50, oversized issue. And in issue number 50, the JSAers were able to wrestle the Starheart free from Mordru. And it was very fitting that it was Jay Garrick who had to play some hot potato with the Starheart in getting the mystical source of Alan's power to him. And by this time, Alan was near death's door. I just remember the pages showing Alan having the Starheart and throwing it to an almost dead Alan and saying, "Sentinel!" And Leonard Kirk just drew the heck out of this scene. The Starheart flew towards Alan, and as it did so, it took on the shape of an iconic green ring that was shaped on the front like an old-time railroad lantern. And the ring settled itself on the middle finger of Alan's left hand. And with that, Alan said, "Sentinel? No, not Sentinel. With this." Then you cut to a great splash page by Leonard Kirk. And Alan is restored physically in his classic Green Lantern costume once more, this time wearing the ring. And he says, "With this, I was and will always be Green Lantern." Great moment for Green Lantern fans, especially fans of Alan Scott. Just thinking of the words, "I was and will always be Green Lantern." Maybe I'm being a little bit nitpicky here, but I've always thought that the words "I am and always will be Green Lantern" roll off the tongue a little bit better. However, I do support the choice of words used by Goyer and Johns here, because we have to remember that going back to Zero Hour, DC editorial was taking away a whole lot. They were taking away the JSA, and while Alan survived the purge, he had his very superhero name taken away from him. And it was after Zero Hour that he had the Sentinel moniker imposed upon him. So the words "I was" are important because it's saying that DC editorial, through Alan's words, were re-embracing Alan's full legacy and recognizing his history as a Green Lantern. For Green Lantern fans in general, this was also an important sign that the editorial edict surrounding Kyle Rayner being the only Green Lantern in the universe was slowly on its way out, and indeed there would be major changes in store for the whole Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps mythology within the next 2 to 3 years. So after this great hurrah moment for Alan, his first point of order was to save his son once and for all. And as Alan created a construct